Sir, step away from the vehicle for me.
All right, no problem.
Is this your car?
Yes, it is. Engine light came on, so I pulled off, waiting for a tow.
Let me see your ID.
Sure, here you go. I'm Judge Robert Fields, Federal District Court.
Who's the registered owner?
I am.
This is not a traffic stop. This is not a misunderstanding. And this is the moment a federal judge ends up in handcuffs on the side of a busy American road, and the officer putting them on has no idea who he's dealing with. Broad daylight. Cars flying past at full speed. Everything captured on a police body cam. What you clicked on is exactly what happens next, and it spirals fast. The body cam is already rolling. Heavy shake with every step. Fisheye distortion warping the edges of the frame. Wind ripping straight into the microphone. Radio chirps cutting through the noise. Late afternoon sunlight blows out parts of the image. Harsh glare, real shadows, no cinematic polish. Just raw footage. Cars roar past a few feet away. Horns blare. No one slows down. On the shoulder sits a black luxury sedan. Hazard lights flashing, hood open. The kind of car that turns heads without trying. Immaculate paint, clean lines, expensive without apology. Standing beside it is a well-dressed black man in a tailored suit, polished shoes, phone pressed calmly to his ear. He doesn't look scared. He doesn't look rushed. He looks frustrated, and that alone seems to irritate the officer. The officer approaches fast. Too fast. His shoulders are tight. His breathing is sharp. There's no greeting, no introduction, no explanation. The first words out of his mouth are a command. Step away from the vehicle. Not a request. The man looks up and says 1 second, still finishing his phone call, and right there, everything changes, because what the officer thinks he's seeing and what's actually happening are about to collide. The officer closes the distance. Sunlight flashes off the flawless black paint. The camera catches a brief glimpse of the interior. Cream leather, spotless, expensive. The officer's voice hardens immediately. Who does this car belong to? The man turns toward him and answers calmly, mine. It broke down. I'm calling for help. No attitude, no resistance, no hesitation. But the officer doesn't slow down. He presses harder. How can you afford something like this? The question hangs heavy in the air, not curiosity, suspicion. The man blinks, genuinely confused. Excuse me? The officer repeats it louder. I asked you a question. Then the flashlight comes out, and it's still daylight. He doesn't need it. But he clicks it on anyway and shines it straight into the man's face. That single action shifts the entire encounter. The man squints against the light, trying to maintain eye contact without reacting, and what he says next should have ended everything instantly. Instead, it makes it worse. I'm a federal judge. My car stalled. I was just calling. He doesn't finish the sentence. The officer cuts him off mid-word. I didn't ask for your life story, hands where I can see them. The man exhales slowly, lowers his phone, clearly displays his hands. I'm cooperating, he says, measured and calm, but the officer snaps back immediately. Stop talking. The flashlight moves closer. Traffic screams by. A truck horn explodes. Someone yells something from the road. The radio crackles with background chatter. The officer turns slightly away from the man and says something that isn't true, but will soon be treated as fact. I've got a male refusing commands. That sentence changes everything. Because from that moment on, this is no longer just an interaction. It's a report in progress, a narrative being built in real time. The man hasn't moved, he hasn't resisted, he hasn't raised his voice. But the label is now attached to him, non-compliant, uncooperative, suspicious. The officer steps closer. Turn around, now. The man asks one word, why? And that's enough. The officer grabs him hard. The camera jolts violently. The image shakes as metal rattles. The man is slammed against the car. Stop resisting, the officer shouts. Even though nothing is happening, the words are loud, clear, for the camera, for the radio, for the report. A second officer yells from off camera. Traffic honks louder. Chaos builds. The judge's suit jacket creases as his body hits the vehicle. His hands are pulled behind his back. Click. The handcuffs lock. Too tight. The man winces but doesn't shout. "You're making a serious mistake," he says quietly. Not as a threat, as a statement. The officer keys his radio again. His voice is calm now. Professional. Controlled. "I've got one detained. Possible stolen vehicle." The phrase echoes through the microphone. Possible stolen vehicle. Sirens rise somewhere in the distance. The camera shakes violently as the officer adjusts his grip. The image tilts briefly toward the sky. Then the frame drops back down to the road, and from the outside it looks like just another stop. Another black man in handcuffs, another police encounter, another few minutes people will scroll past. But this stop didn't start here. Because the man in those cuffs didn't wake up that morning expecting to be questioned about whether he deserved his own car. He didn't expect to be interrupted mid-sentence. He didn't expect to be treated like a problem that needed controlling. And this wasn't the first time something like this had happened to him. Long before the sirens, long before the radio call, long before the officer ever stepped out of his cruiser, this man had already spent decades learning how quickly authority can turn against you. He didn't grow up wealthy. He didn't inherit power. Nothing was handed to him. He learned early how to stay calm when accused, how to keep his voice steady, how to de-escalate situations he didn't create. That calm you see on the body cam wasn't confidence, it was experience. Because as a black man in America, even success doesn't buy immunity. Sometimes it just raises suspicion. Years of education, years of scrutiny, years of background checks, years of being careful because one mistake would follow him forever. He had argued cases that changed lives, signed rulings with real consequences, sat in rooms where his words carried weight, and yet here he was, pinned against his own car, on the side of the road, being told to stop resisting when he wasn't resisting at all. The cuffs dig into his wrists, traffic keeps moving, life keeps going. The officer doesn't ask for ID, doesn't verify anything, doesn't slow down, because once a narrative is chosen, facts become optional. Backup is already on the way. A second cruiser pulls in behind the first, then another. Red and blue lights flash across the black paint of the sedan, reflecting like something out of a movie. Except this isn't staged. This is still happening. The energy changes. When more officers arrive, no one wants to be the one who questions the original report. No one wants to contradict what's already been said on the radio. Possible stolen vehicle and driver not cooperating. That's all it takes. The judge is guided toward the guardrail, not gently. His suit jacket brushes against metal. Dust smears the fabric. Someone driving past yells something unintelligible. A phone camera flashes from a passing car. The judge recognizes that sound instantly. Someone is recording. And he knows something else too. This body cam isn't just recording him, it's recording them. Every word, every command, every exaggeration, and none of it can be taken back. The second officer finally steps fully into frame. You hear him before you see him. His voice is calmer, slower. He asks a simple question. What's going on? The answer comes fast. Possible stolen vehicle. Driver not cooperating. The words land like a stamp. Approved. Accepted. No follow-up questions. No verification. Just alignment. The judge stands cuffed, facing traffic. Cars whip past. Wind tugs at his jacket. He says nothing for a moment. He understands this phase. He's seen it before from the other side of the bench. When momentum takes over, when no one wants to be the first to slow things down. He finally speaks again. You need to call your supervisor, he says. You need to run my name. His voice is calm, almost instructional. The first officer ignores him. Keys his radio again. Requests a supervisor. Just to be safe. Just to be safe means time. It means control. It means the cuffs stay on. Sirens grow louder. Another cruiser arrives, doors slam, boots hit pavement. The roadside becomes a scene. Red and blue lights flicker across passing windshields. Drivers slow down now. Phones come out. Someone points. Someone records. An officer asks quietly, "Did he show ID?" The first officer shakes his head, says he kept talking, wouldn't follow commands. The judge hears it, knows exactly what's happening. Words are being stacked. A version of events is being constructed. The search begins. Careful, methodical, wallet removed, phone taken, keys set on the hood. The camera dips just enough to catch it. The ID clear, official, undeniable, federal. Judge. There's a pause, a real one. You can feel it through the body cam. One officer reads it again, looks up, looks back down, looks at the judge, then looks toward the first officer. No one speaks. That silence matters, because this is the moment everything could stop. This is the moment where someone could say, "Hold on." This is the moment where the story could be corrected. Instead, the first officer takes the ID, glances at it, hands it back without comment. No apology, no acknowledgement. He turns away and radios again. Supervisor is en route. The cuffs stay on. The judge closes his eyes briefly, not in anger, in calculation. He knows what this means now. This will not end on the roadside. This will move somewhere else. The supervisor arrives minutes later, older, slower, more careful. He listens as the first officer explains. The explanation sounds different this time, less confident, more vague. The supervisor asks questions that should have been asked from the start. Why was he detained? What was the probable cause? What commands were refused? The answers come out fragmented, defensive, incomplete. The supervisor turns to the judge for the first time. "Sir, can you confirm your name?" The judge does, clearly, without hesitation. The supervisor runs it. The result comes back almost instantly. Everything stops. The cuffs come off. Metal clicks open. Wrists drop. The judge rubs them slowly. Red marks already forming. The supervisor clears his throat. Says there seems to have been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. The word hangs there, empty. The judge looks at him. "This was not a misunderstanding," he says. "This was a choice." No one responds. Lights begin to shut off. Cruisers pull away one by one. Traffic resumes its normal pace. The roadside empties. The luxury sedan sits quietly, still broken down, still harmless. But nothing is normal anymore. Within hours, the footage is flagged. Within a day, it's reviewed. Within a week, it's leaked. And when people see it, they don't focus on the yelling. They focus on the calm. They focus on how many chances there were to stop it. They focus on the moment the ID appeared. And they ask the same question again and again. If this can happen to a federal judge, what happens to everyone else? The department releases a statement, then another. Words like protocol, procedure, under review. The officer is placed on administrative leave. The judge files suit, not quietly, not privately, publicly, because this wasn't about him, it was about the pattern. Legal analysts break the footage down frame by frame. They pause on the flashlight, the interruption, the first stop resisting, the radio call that wasn't true. They replay the moment the ID appears. They replay the silence afterward. Why didn't anyone stop it? That question spreads faster than the footage itself. Reporters dig into the officer's history, previous complaints, similar language, the same phrases showing up again and again, refused commands, suspicious behavior, words that look neutral on paper, words that sound very different on video. Former officers speak up, some cautiously, some bluntly. They say the escalation wasn't necessary. They say the radio language mattered. They say once possible stolen vehicle is spoken, everything changes. Because that phrase gives permission. Permission for force. Permission for backup. Permission to stop asking questions. The judge gives one interview. One. He says this wasn't about disrespect. It wasn't about ego. It was about being presumed guilty before being heard. He says the most frightening part wasn't the cuffs. It was how normal everything felt to the officers involved. That line goes viral. The lawsuit moves forward. Depositions are taken. Bodycam footage is replayed in silence. The officer watches himself speak, watches himself escalate. There's no soundtrack now, just evidence. Settlement discussions begin, then stall. The judge refuses to settle quietly. He wants change written into the agreement. Policy updates, training requirements, accountability. Eventually, the department agrees. The officer resigns before termination. No press conference, no farewell. Just a name removed from a schedule. The judge returns to his bench. The footage stays online. Years from now, people will still watch it, not because it's shocking, but because it's familiar, because it shows how fast things can go wrong, how quickly authority can override truth, and how powerful a camera can be when it doesn't look away. This wasn't about a broken down car. It wasn't about a luxury sedan. It wasn't even about a judge. It was about how easily assumptions become actions, and how one body cam made it impossible to deny. The judge doesn't talk about the stop much after that, not because he's afraid, because he understands what happens once a story like this escapes its moment. It becomes bigger than the people in it. Back in chambers, the courtroom feels different. Every knock sounds sharper. Every raised voice lands heavier. He watches defendants stand where he once stood, waiting for someone to decide who they are before hearing a word they say. That irony isn't lost on him. He starts noticing things he hadn't noticed before. How often noncompliance shows up in reports. How often escalation is justified after the fact. How often tone becomes evidence. And he realizes something uncomfortable. The only reason this didn't end worse is because the camera kept running. If that body cam had malfunctioned, if the battery had died, if the footage had gone missing, this would have been a report, not a reckoning. Meanwhile, the department scrambles quietly, internally. Emails go out. Meetings are held behind closed doors. Supervisors remind officers about language, about optics, about cameras. No one says the word racism. They say perception. They say policy. They say communication. The officer at the center of it stays silent, and friends say he's frustrated, confused, angry. They say he feels betrayed by the system, that he was trained to control situations quickly, that he followed procedure as he understood it. But training doesn't erase choice, and video doesn't forget. Civil rights organizations request the footage. Universities analyze it. Training academies quietly add it to lesson plans under vague titles like escalation awareness. Students watch it, pause it, rewind it. They're told to identify the turning point. Some say it's the flashlight, some say it's the radio call, and some say it's the question about the car. But the judge knows the real moment. It's the interruption. The moment someone says, "Stop talking," instead of "Tell me more." That's where everything changes. Public opinion shifts slowly, then all at once. People who normally stay silent speak up, not with outrage, with recognition. They say this has happened to them, or to their brother, or to their father. They say the calm didn't help. They say compliance didn't save them. They say credentials didn't matter. The phrase, "if it can happen to a judge," becomes shorthand. It shows up in debates, in classrooms, in late-night conversations. The department finalizes the settlement months later. The number is large, but it's not what headlines remember. What people remember are the policy changes attached to it. Mandatory supervisor review for roadside detentions beyond a set time. Clearer restrictions on flashlight use. Stricter language standards for radio calls. Rules written in response to moments that should never have happened. The judge insists on one more thing: transparency. The footage stays public. No sealing, no quiet removal, because the lesson disappears if the evidence does. Years pass. The officer's name fades from headlines. The department moves on. New recruits come in. But the video remains, shared, clipped, referenced, and every time someone watches it, they notice something new. A hesitation, a breath, a pause that never came. That's the real power of the footage. It doesn't shout, it doesn't accuse, it just shows. And showing is enough. If you watch this entire story, you didn't just see an arrest, you saw how authority sounds when it isn't questioned. You saw how fast a narrative can override reality, and you saw how one camera changed the outcome. Because without it, this wouldn't be a story at all. It would have been just another line in a report. The judge never forgets the sound of the cuffs, not because they were loud, because of how ordinary they were. That click wasn't dramatic. It wasn't violent. It was procedural. And that's what stays with him, because systems don't fail loudly. They fail quietly, in moments that feel routine to the people inside them. In the months that follow, he starts speaking to law students, not as a victim, as a witness. He doesn't describe the officer as evil. He describes the moment as predictable. And that makes people uncomfortable. He tells them the danger isn't hatred, it's certainty. The belief that you already know who someone is before they speak. He tells them power doesn't always announce itself with cruelty. Sometimes it arrives as impatience, as interruption, as tone. Meanwhile, departments across the country circulate memos. Training modules are updated. Phrases are flagged. Stop resisting becomes a liability. Possible stolen vehicle becomes something to justify, not assume. Quiet changes, uneven changes, but changes nonetheless. The video becomes a reference point, a shorthand, a before and after marker, not because it's the worst case anyone has seen, but because it's the clearest. People point to it and say, this is what escalation looks like before it explodes. And slowly the conversation shifts, not from police versus public, but from authority versus accountability. The judge returns to his routine. Court dates, opinions, rulings. But something in him is sharper now. He listens differently. He watches posture. He notices how often silence is mistaken for guilt. And when defendants stand before him and struggle to explain themselves, he gives them space. Because he knows what it feels like to be cut off mid-sentence. The officer disappears from public view, not disgraced, not redeemed, just gone. Another quiet ending. Another reminder that consequences don't always look like justice, they look like absence. And that may be the hardest part for some people, because they want villains, they want closure, they want punishment that feels proportional. But reality rarely offers that. What it offers instead is proof. Proof that calm doesn't always protect you. Proof that credentials don't guarantee respect. Proof that cameras don't change behavior. They reveal it. Years from now, new viewers will stumble across the clip. They won't know the names. They won't know the outcome. They'll just watch. They'll see the question about the car. They'll hear the interruption. They'll notice how fast the story is decided. And they'll feel that familiar tightening in their chest. Because they've seen this before, maybe not on a highway, maybe not in handcuffs, but in classrooms, in offices, in interviews, in moments where being heard mattered and didn't happen. That's why this video endures. Not because it's rare, but because it isn't. And that's the truth the camera captured better than any verdict ever could. If you watch this entire story, you already understand why it matters. Because nothing about it was extraordinary, and that's exactly the problem. If this story opened your eyes, hit like, subscribe for real Bodycam stories, and share this video so the truth reaches more people. Your support helps these stories stay visible. Don't look away.